Negotiating part 4. This is the final video in my series. Is the deal dead? There's so many areas that I could go into this, but I will stay focused on this subject because I think it's a really interesting subject where we are concerned that as we are negotiating a deal and it's constantly going back and forth between the buyer and seller, and we just can't have a meeting of the minds, the deal dies. Is it really dead? That's a question. If you don't know me, my name's Melissa Scott, and I work with my partner Frank Russamano, and we service the Hamilton and Niagara regions. That includes a whole host of areas. What we like to do is educate our buyers and sellers so that you have a good understanding of what it means to be represented by us, how we approach every transaction, which is not a transaction to us, but it is the buying or selling of your home, which is an incredibly important thing in somebody's life, and we take it very seriously. So let me get back into this because I think a dead deal is a very interesting subject. A house going into an expired listing, also another very interesting subject. However, I am specifically addressing negotiations in this 4-part series, so I will stay on task with that. So you are negotiating back and forth. I've been going on the buyer side a lot, so I'm going to stick with the buyer side from that perspective, and we'll approach it in that manner because I think it's easier to stay on task from that. So you're a buyer and you determine that you are madly in love with this house and you want to put an offer together and you are hoping to get this house. So you put an offer together, your agent, I'm representing you, for example, or Frank, both of us are representing you because we work together. We have consulted with the other agent. They have told us what the seller is looking for a closing date. We have an expectation of what market value is. We have an expectation of what they would like to see or not see for conditions. And we are wanting to purchase this house. This is your house. This is your dream home. This is the first house that you want to buy. You want to live there forever. You want all the bells and whistles. This house fits the bill on every single level. This is your house. So we put the offer together, and what happens a lot of times in negotiation is a seller thinks their house is worth more than what it is, and a buyer thinks their house is worth less than it is. And a solid negotiation is where both buyer and seller walk away from the deal happy. Neither of them feel taken advantage of. In my objective, that's what I like to do. I never like to see a deal die. However, I can push back from both sides, from a buying perspective and a selling perspective, if I have the agent on the other side doesn't listen to what I am telling them. So let's say you're a first-time home buyer and you go into this house that's the house of your dreams that you absolutely want to purchase, and it meets all your criteria, except you don't want to pay that much. So you decide that, even after consulting with us, you decide that the house is not worth $780,000. It's worth $699,000. Even though I've shown you all the market comparatives and you understand that the house is not worth that much money based on what is sold most recently, because that is where we get our market value comps from. What has sold most recently, like versus like. We don't compare a back split with a 2-story. We don't compare a bungalow with a 2-story. We don't compare a single detached home freehold 2-story with a townhome that's connected. That is a completely unfair comparison, and we cannot compare those together that have sold in the most, I'm going to say 30 days. Because right now, with where we've had the market shift so drastically in this last year, and we've more or less normalized with our pricing, I don't want to look at something that sold 180 days ago. I want to look at something that has sold within the last 2 weeks, 30 days, 60 days tops. I want to compare something that is, if your house is, the house we're putting an offer in is located on a court, I want to compare to a court. If you are located on a major arterial road, I want to look at the similar sized homes on a major arterial road in that same neighborhood. That's absolutely imperative. I can't compare something up on the mountain in Stony Creek, for example, as opposed to something that's down located by the water on Lake Ontario. Completely unfair comparison. So you decide you don't want to pay that much money. You want to put an offer in for $699. How do you think that's going to land on the seller? If you were in the seller's shoes, how would you receive that offer? Well, I've seen it go one of two ways, many, many times. The seller pushes back and says a big, for lack of better words, and writes back either their list price or more, or maybe $1,000 or $5,000 less. I always try to encourage them to write back what the expectation is that they want to receive if I'm the selling agent. And as the buying agent, if you have been given enough grace that they've decided to even sign the offer back, you really should be addressing what would be a more realistic price to pay for that property if you so desperately want it. Please keep that in mind. Let's say nothing happens. Let's say you put an offer in that's insulting to a seller and they sign it back at list. And you are sitting there going, what do I do now? And the irrevocable has been pushed to the max and you don't have enough time to address it. That was the seller telling you what their expectations are. That was the seller saying, I'm not willing to play. And if you don't come in within a reasonable amount, we're not even going to sign it back to you and be respectful, because a seller even signing that back is actually quite remarkable. So what I would recommend to you is, or the agent, I guess, the buying agent, if that happens to you, get on the phone right away with the agent. The deal is never dead. It is dead physically, but the whole transaction and interaction between these two parties is never dead. That's up to the agents to work together to negotiate the best outcome for both buyer and seller. Put your egos aside. That is one of the biggest things in this industry. Put your ego aside. That goes for agents, that goes for buyers, that goes for sellers. Put your ego aside. Quite often when deals have fallen apart like that, I have been able to renegotiate, have a new deal, a new offer written up. If I've been on the selling side or on the buying side, I will encourage my buyers to put their ego aside and rewrite the deal. Take into deep consideration how the offer was signed back to you so you have a very good understanding of what the expectations are. If you really want the house, then you have to work within the parameters of the deal. If you don't want the house, then walk away and find another house. But learn from that lesson. Learn and understand that the negotiation has to happen between two people. There is a power seat that happens, and the person who has the deal last is ultimately in power of deciding yay or nay. That is where the power play comes in. This can be a very ego-driven industry. I choose not to do that, and I work very hard to not let my ego get a hold of me so that my buyers or sellers could potentially lose a deal, because to me, that is not what I'm doing this job for. I do this job because I love helping people, as does Frank, and we're really good at it. So I hope this helps. You can always rewrite an offer the next day. You can change the irrevocables. You can be courteous to each other and give each other enough time on the irrevocable. You can address the conditions. You can address the closing date. You can work within your own financial parameters so that you can afford to buy the house that is the house of your dreams, because that's always a factor. And remember, everybody always works to their monthly. Whatever your monthly payments are that you can afford, that's what everybody works towards. So keep that in mind. What does $10,000 represent to you when it is dispersed over 30 years? So I hope that helps. I never want to see you lose a deal. I always want to see you win. So peace out. Love y'all. Ciao for now.